Welcome to this deep dive
Okay.
into overcoming obstacles.
Yeah.
And we are exploring it through the lens of Stoicism,
Right.
um, using a modern book on the philosophy
Mm-hmm.
and some of its key sources,
Okay.
writings from historical figures, philosophers,
Yeah.
real-world examples.
I like it.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's about more than just like toughing it out, you know?
Right.
It's about shifting your perspective to see those roadblocks
Mm.
as opportunities.
Exactly. A lot of people think Stoicism is about suppressing emotions or,
Yeah.
becoming some emotionless robot,
Right.
but it's really about harnessing your emotions and reactions
Right.
to become more resilient.
Yeah.
And the sources you've gathered really highlight how these principles have been used successfully throughout history,
Yeah.
which I think, makes them feel much more applicable today.
Right. It's not some dusty old philosophy.
Yeah.
Let's jump right in.
Okay.
One of the most striking ideas I found was this concept that obstacles aren't just things to get over.
Yeah.
They're chances to grow.
It's almost like the obstacle itself is a teacher.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
think about the story of Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
We know him as this eloquent writer,
Mhm.
the author of the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
But he actually had a severe speech impediment.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think that this obstacle,
Yeah.
something that could have held him back,
Right.
might have actually shaped his path,
Right.
pushing him to develop his writing skills.
And it's those writing skills that allowed him to make such a huge impact.
Right.
Instead of being defeated by the obstacle, he found a way to use it to his advantage.
Yeah.
That's a recurring theme throughout all these sources.
Right.
The modern book puts it this way.
Okay.
In every situation, that which blocks our path actually presents a new path with a new part of us.
Wow.
It makes you wonder how we can apply this idea to our own lives. What seemingly negative situation has actually led to a positive outcome for you?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it leads perfectly into the next concept,
Okay.
building inner strength.
Okay.
The sources highlight Theodore Roosevelt, who battled severe asthma as a child,
Mm-hmm.
but went on to become this image of vitality and strength.
Right.
It makes you think about what inner resources we
Yeah.
can tap into to overcome challenges.
Roosevelt's story is a great example of turning a weakness into a strength.
Right.
His father recognized that his son's physical limitations could be overcome through physical training,
Right.
which helped build not just his body, but also his mental and emotional resilience.
Right.
And of course, we see that play out in his later life as he took on these incredibly demanding roles.
Yeah.
Um, this brings to mind the Stoic concept of the inner citadel.
Right. That idea of creating a mental fortress,
Yeah.
a place of strength and stability that you can retreat to when things get tough.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something you're just born with, right?
No.
How do we actually build this inner citadel?
Well, the sources are pretty clear on this. It takes effort and practice.
Yeah.
Roosevelt's rigorous physical training wasn't just about overcoming asthma. It was about building that inner citadel through discipline and self-control.
Right.
And it reminds us that resilience is a muscle
Right.
that we can all develop just like any other skill.
Right.
What are some ways you think we can strengthen our inner citadel beyond physical training?
Well, I think mindfulness practices like meditation
Yeah.
could be a great way to cultivate that inner strength and clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even things like journaling or practicing gratitude can help us build that sense of perspective
Right.
and self-awareness that's so crucial in challenging times.
Absolutely. And I think even seeking out challenges in a controlled way,
Yeah.
like learning a new skill or pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone,
Right.
can help build that mental toughness.
So we've talked about seeing obstacles as opportunities
Yeah.
and building inner strength. But what about those times when a problem appears out of nowhere
Right.
and we're completely blindsided?
Yeah.
I was intrigued by this Stoic technique called the premortem.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds a bit morbid,
Yeah.
but the idea seems really useful.
It is. It's more about being prepared than pessimistic.
Right.
It comes from the Latin premeditatio malorum,
Okay.
which
yeah.
literally means premeditation of evils.
Okay.
So instead of waiting for something to go wrong and then analyzing it,
Yeah.
you do it in advance.
Okay.
So imagine you're about to launch a new project.
Okay.
Before you start, you gather your team and ask, okay, let's fast forward 6 months. This project has failed miserably. What happened?
It's like running a simulation in your head.
Yeah,
But for all the ways things could go wrong,
right.
that's so much better than the usual postmortem we do after the damage is done.
Yeah.
It's about being proactive,
Yeah.
anticipating challenges,
Mm-hmm.
and developing strategies to deal with them.
Exactly. And it's not just for CEOs and big projects. You could apply it to anything,
Mm-hmm.
a presentation, a difficult conversation,
Yeah.
even planning a vacation.
Yeah.
By mentally rehearsing potential problems,
Okay.
we develop backup plans, manage expectations, and we don't get totally derailed when things inevitably go awry.
That's such a practical tool.
Yeah.
It helps us shift from a reactive mindset
Right.
to a more proactive and prepared approach.
Exactly. It allows us to harness our anxiety
Right.
and use it to our advantage.
Okay, so we're seeing obstacles clearly.
Yeah.
We're acting with intention.
Hmm.
But what about the things we just can't control?
Right.
The weather, other people's actions,
Yeah.
traffic.
Yes.
The sources talk about the art of acquiescence,
Mhm.
this idea of accepting what we can't change.
Right.
How do we even begin to figure out what falls into that category?
It's about recognizing the difference between what's within our sphere of influence and what's outside of it.
Right.
The Stoics believed we should focus our energy on what we can control.
Okay.
Our thoughts, our actions, our reactions.
Right.
But for the things outside that sphere,
Yeah.
the key is acceptance.
Okay.
It's not about giving up or resigning ourselves to a bad situation.
Right.
It's about acknowledging reality and working within those constraints.
Okay.
There's a great story about Phil Jackson,
Okay.
the legendary basketball coach.
Hmm.
He had a hip injury that forced him to coach from a chair.
Oh, wow.
Not exactly the picture of a dynamic leader.
I can imagine that was a tough adjustment for someone used to being so active on the sidelines.
It was.
Yeah.
But instead of fighting it, he adapted.
Yeah.
He found new ways to communicate with his players,
Yeah.
and it actually led to a positive shift in his coaching style.
Wow.
He became a better listener,
Okay.
more observant,
Right.
and his players responded to that.
So he turned what could have been a major setback into a strength.
Exactly.
He found the opportunity within the obstacle.
Exactly. This acceptance isn't about passivity.
Okay.
It's about channeling your energy effectively. What stands out to you about this idea of acquiescence?
I think it's a really powerful reminder that we don't always get to choose what happens to us,
Mm-hmm.
but we always get to choose how we respond.
Right.
And sometimes the most empowering response is to accept what is
Right.
and find a way to move forward from there.
I think that's a great insight. And
Ah.
that leads us to one of the more challenging
Okay.
yet fascinating
Yeah.
Stoic concepts.
Okay.
Amor fati,
Okay.
the love of fate.
Okay. I have to admit, this one's a little harder to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to actually enjoy the bad things that happen to us?
Well, it's less about enjoyment and more about finding the good,
Yeah.
even in the most challenging situations.
Right.
Think about Thomas Edison.
Okay.
His entire factory burned down,
Wow.
years of work,
Yeah.
priceless research, all gone.
Yeah.
His reaction,
Yeah.
we've just got rid of a lot of rubbish.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
But seriously, how do you cultivate that level of acceptance?
Right.
It almost feels superhuman.
The sources suggest that amor fati isn't about denying the difficulty of a situation.
Okay.
It's about choosing to find the opportunity within it.
Right.
Like Edison seeing the fire as a chance to rebuild and innovate.
Yeah.
Or look at the boxer Jack Johnson.
Okay.
During this brutal fight,
Mm-hmm.
his opponent and the crowd were constantly taunting him.
Oh, wow.
But instead of letting it get to him, he used their negativity as fuel.
Okay.
He smiled.
Wow.
He joked.
Really?
And he stayed calm and in control.
Wow.
He won that fight,
Oh, wow.
and his demeanor was a big part of it.
So amor fati isn't about pretending things are okay when they're not.
Right.
It's about finding that kernel of good,
Yeah.
that opportunity for growth,
Right.
even in the midst of hardship.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's a way of looking at life with a more playful,
Yeah.
even joyful attitude, no matter what comes your way.
Exactly. It's about finding the strength and resilience to embrace whatever life throws at you and turn it into something positive.
Yeah.
It's about saying yes to life in all its messy and unpredictable glory.
That's a really powerful concept.
Yeah.
But we don't always have the luxury of time to adjust our mindset when facing an obstacle.
Right.
Sometimes it takes sheer grit and determination to just get through it.
Yeah.
The sources make a distinction between persistence and perseverance.
Okay.
Okay.
I like this.
Yeah.
So persistence is that repeated action, the hammering away at a problem.
Okay.
Perseverance is deeper. It's the long game.
Right.
Think of Odysseus, his 10-year journey home after the Trojan War.
Storms, monsters, captivity, you name it, he faced it.
Yeah.
But he never gave up on that goal of getting home. That's
Exactly.
perseverance.
Right. He was committed to the journey, even though it was long and arduous.
Right.
Persistence is the sprint,
Okay.
but perseverance is the marathon.
Got it.
It's about staying in the fight round after round,
Yeah.
even when you're not sure you're going to win.
And I think that's something we can all relate to.
You know, we all have goals we've given up on maybe too soon.
Right.
What if we'd persevered just a little bit longer?
Yeah.
What might the outcome have been?
It's a powerful question to reflect on.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that extra bit of effort, that unwavering commitment to the goal is what makes all the difference.
And that's especially true when we feel overwhelmed or like we're facing those challenges alone.
Right.
Which brings us to the next point.
Okay.
The sources talk about the importance of finding strength in something larger than ourselves.
Right. And they share the incredible story of James Stockdale,
Okay.
a Navy pilot who was a POW in Vietnam for over 7 years.
Oh, wow.
He endured torture, isolation,
Right.
unimaginable hardship.
Yeah.
What kept him going was his focus on something beyond his own suffering,
Right.
his fellow prisoners.
He put their needs above his own finding purpose and strength in that commitment to something larger than himself.
Exactly.
That's a really powerful example of how focusing on others can help us transcend our own individual struggles. And you don't have to be a POW to experience this. Think about how you can contribute to something bigger than yourself, especially when you're going through a tough time.
Right.
Maybe it's volunteering, supporting a cause you believe in,
Yeah.
or even just being there for a friend who's struggling.
It's about finding that sense of purpose and connection that can help us navigate those difficult times. And maybe, just maybe, by helping others, we end up helping ourselves in the process.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how shifting your focus outward, even in the midst of personal struggle, can give you a whole new source of strength.
Yeah.
But there's another Stoic practice that seems counterintuitive when you're talking about overcoming obstacles and achieving goals.
Yeah.
It's memento mori,
Right.
the meditation on death.
It sounds morbid,
Yeah.
but it's actually about gaining perspective.
Okay.
It's not about dwelling on death or becoming fatalistic, but rather using the awareness of our mortality
Right.
to clarify our priorities and make the most of the time we have. One of the sources shares the story of Michel de Montaigne,
Okay.
who had a near-death experience.
Oh, wow.
It totally changed his perspective on life, and it's reflected in his writing from that point on.
That makes sense. Facing your own mortality would certainly make you reevaluate what's truly important.
Yeah.
It's not about, living each day like it's your last in a reckless way,
Right.
but more about making conscious choices about how you spend your time and energy.
Exactly. When you contemplate your own mortality,
Right.
it can be incredibly clarifying.
Yeah.
It strips away the trivial stuff and helps you focus on what truly matters.
Right.
The sources suggest that memento mori is about recognizing that our time is finite
Okay.
and using that awareness to live more intentionally.
So meditating on death, not to become gloomy,
Right.
but to gain perspective and urgency.
Mhm.
I like that.
Yeah.
But even with all these Stoic tools, it's easy to feel discouraged when you hit a setback.
Sure.
How do you stay motivated, especially when it feels like you're constantly facing new obstacles?
That's where the idea of preparing to start again comes in.
Okay.
It's this understanding that overcoming obstacles is a continuous process.
Right.
There's no finish line.
Right.
The sources even quote a Haitian proverb.
Okay.
Behind mountains are more mountains.
That's a great image.
Yeah,
As soon as you conquer one peak, there's another one looming on the horizon.
exactly.
There's no point at which we suddenly become immune to challenges.
Exactly. The key is to conserve your energy.
Yeah.
Learn from each experience and
Right.
maintain perspective.
Right.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
You have to pace yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Take breaks when you need them and
Yeah.
be prepared to adjust your strategy along the way.
So it's not about avoiding setbacks altogether, but about accepting them as part of the process
Right.
and learning to bounce back from them.
Yeah, this all ties back to that Stoic principle of accepting what we can't control.
Right. You're not going to control every aspect of the journey, but you can control how you respond to the detours and unexpected challenges.
Exactly.
This brings us to what is perhaps the most powerful idea from all the sources we've explored.
Okay.
The obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
They tell the story of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher.
Right.
One of his generals, Avidius Cassius, launched a rebellion against him.
Yeah, that's a big one.
You'd expect anger, A thirst for
It
revenge.
was a massive betrayal.
Right.
And yet Marcus Aurelius responded with incredible compassion.
Really?
He didn't seek retribution or lash out.
Wow.
He focused on forgiveness and finding a peaceful resolution.
Okay.
He saw this rebellion, this major obstacle, as an opportunity to demonstrate strength through mercy.
It's like he took this incredibly challenging situation and used it to showcase his values and his leadership.
Right.
He didn't let the obstacle define him. He used it to define his character.
That's the essence of the obstacle is the way.
Right.
It's not some mystical idea. It's a practical approach to dealing with challenges.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that obstacles are inevitable and that they can actually be the path to growth, wisdom,
Right.
and even greater strength.
So how do we bring this idea into our own lives?
Yeah.
How do we actually start seeing the obstacle
Yeah.
as the way?
The sources break it down into 3 essential disciplines:
Okay.
perception, action, and will.
Okay.
First, we need to see the situation clearly, to understand the nature of the obstacle.
Right.
Then we need to take deliberate action to navigate the obstacle effectively.
Sure.
And finally, we need a strong will to persevere through the difficulties and setbacks that inevitably arise.
It's like a three-legged stool.
Yeah.
Perception, action, and will.
Yeah.
Each one is essential for maintaining balance and stability as we navigate the challenges of life.
Think of all the people we've talked about. Thomas Jefferson,
Right.
Theodore Roosevelt, James Stockdale,
Right.
even Jack Johnson.
Yeah.
They all embodied these disciplines even if they weren't consciously practicing Stoicism.
Right.
They were doers, people who faced incredible challenges and not only survived but thrived.
They saw obstacles as opportunities to learn, to grow, to become stronger.
That's the key takeaway here.
Yeah.
The obstacle is the way not because it magically disappears,
Right.
but because it forces us to adapt, to grow,
Right.
to become more resourceful.
Right.
It's a reminder that challenges are an inevitable part of life,
Yeah.
and they can actually be the catalyst for becoming better versions of ourselves.
So we've got this amazing toolkit of Stoic principles and inspiring examples.
Right.
But how do we actually apply this to our own lives?
Well-
Where do we start?
The sources suggest starting with a simple question. What obstacle are you currently facing?
Oh,
It could be a personal challenge, a professional setback, a relationship issue, anything that's standing in the way of your goals or well-being.
right.
Once you've identified the obstacle, ask yourself, how can I start to see this as the way forward?
It's about shifting our perspective, reframing the obstacle as an opportunity. I love that.
Yeah.
But sometimes that shift in perspective feels impossible.
Yeah.
How do you make that mental leap when you're feeling stuck?
I think it starts with curiosity.
Why?
Instead of focusing on the negative aspects of the obstacle,
Right.
try to approach it with a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Or what new possibilities might this open up?
It's about approaching the obstacle with a sense of openness rather than resistance.
Exactly. And that's where the Stoic disciplines of perception, action, and whole come in.
Right.
You use your perception to understand the obstacle clearly.
Right.
You take action to navigate it effectively.
Right.
And you draw on your will to persevere through the challenges.
It's about embracing the journey with all its bumps and detours and trusting that each obstacle we overcome brings us closer to becoming the best versions of ourselves.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, you don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
The Stoics believed in the power of community and finding support in others.
Which is a great reminder that we're all in this together.
Absolutely.
We all face obstacles, but we don't have to face them alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to get caught up in the idea that we have to go it alone.
Right.
That resilience is a solo sport,
Yeah.
but having that support system,
Mm-hmm.
those people you can lean on,
Right.
makes a huge difference.
The Stoics would absolutely agree with that. They
Yeah.
placed a high value on community
Right.
and helping one another.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected
Right.
and that our individual journeys are part of a larger tapestry.
I love that imagery.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we're not just isolated individuals
Right.
battling our own separate challenges.
Mm-hmm.
We're part of something much bigger.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to this idea that Stoicism is not just some ancient philosophy.
Right.
It's a practical toolkit for living a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Mm-hmm.
But where do we begin?
Yeah, that's
How do we
good.
take all this wisdom and actually put it into practice?
The sources suggest starting with awareness.
Okay.
Pay attention to your thoughts,
Right.
your reactions,
Mm-hmm.
your default patterns when you encounter obstacles. Notice those knee-jerk responses.
Right?
Do you get angry, frustrated, or discouraged?
Yeah.
Or do you approach the challenge as an opportunity to learn and grow?
It's like hitting that pause button before we react,
Right.
giving ourselves a moment to observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Exactly. It's about creating that space for conscious choice.
Right.
Once we're aware of our default patterns,
Okay.
we can start to choose a different response.
Yeah.
We can choose to see the obstacle as the way.
Right.
One of the quotes from the modern book really stuck with me.
Okay.
The world could use fewer martyrs, we have it within us, to be the type of people who try to get things done, try with everything we've got, and whatever verdict comes in, are ready to accept it instantly and move on to whatever is next.
Right.
Is that you can? Because it can be.
That's a powerful challenge.
Yeah.
It's about taking ownership of our responses
Right.
and choosing to approach challenges with a more resilient and adaptable mindset.
Exactly.
But awareness is just the first step, right?
Right.
How do we actually cultivate that new way of responding?
Practice.
Okay.
The sources emphasize that Stoicism, like any philosophy or skill, requires active engagement.
Right.
It's not a spectator sport.
Right.
You have to get in the game
Mm-hmm.
and test these principles in the real world.
Okay.
Start small.
Right.
Next time you hit a minor obstacle like traffic, a frustrating email,
Yeah.
a long line at the store, see if you can apply one of these Stoic principles.
Think of those little daily workouts for your mind,
Yeah.
building those mental muscles.
Precisely. Maybe you try some premeditatio malorum before a big presentation or
Yeah.
a challenging conversation.
Okay.
Or practice the art of acquiescence when you're dealing with a delayed flight or bad weather.
And even those moments of frustration can be opportunities to practice amor fati,
Right.
finding that silver lining,
Yeah.
that unexpected benefit
Mm-hmm.
in the midst of the chaos.
The more we practice,
Right.
the more these principles become integrated into our thinking and behavior. They become our go-to strategies for navigating life's ups and downs.
It's like building muscle memory for the mind, training ourselves to respond to obstacles with more resilience and resourcefulness.
And it's important to remember that this is a journey,
Right.
not a destination.
Right.
There will be setbacks,
Mm-hmm.
times when we fall back into old patterns.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
The key is to keep practicing.
Right.
Keep learning.
Mm-hmm.
Keep striving to become the best versions of ourselves.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Absolutely. And as we make progress on this journey, as we learn to see obstacles as the way,
Right.
we not only become more resilient and resourceful ourselves,
Right.
but we also contribute to a more resilient and resourceful world.
Right.
The Stoics believed that our individual growth and well-being were interconnected with the well-being of society as a whole.
It's like those ripples expanding outward,
Right.
touching everything in their path.
Exactly, as Marcus Aurelius wrote.
Yeah.
Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one.
Powerful words.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Stoicism and the art of turning obstacles into opportunities, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we all have this incredible power within us
Right.
to choose our response,
Yeah.
to choose how we perceive and react to the challenges that life throws our way.
It's about recognizing that we are not defined by the obstacles we face, but by how we choose to respond to them.
And by choosing to see the obstacle as the way, by embracing those challenges as opportunities for growth and learning,
Right.
we not only become more resilient ourselves, but also inspire others to do the same.
We become living examples of what's possible when we embrace the Stoic principles of perception, action, and will.
So next time you're facing an obstacle, big or small, remember the Stoics.
Yeah.
Remember their wisdom, their courage, and their unwavering commitment to living a meaningful life. Remember that you have the power within you to choose your response, to turn that obstacle into the way forward, and to become the best version of yourself.